I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with a head. It's 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Buccaneers win. This is the first time we have done a post-game victory show for the 2024 season. The Buccaneers make quick work of the Cincinnati Bengals to kick off the preseason. 17-14, your final score in that one. And I gotta say, Evan, initially, my reaction is that this is probably one of the more entertaining preseason games I have seen in recent memory. The Buccaneers score with under a minute left, right after the Bengals had marched down the field and scored with under 4 minutes left to go. The Buccaneers answer, take the lead by 3 with under a minute left to go. They hang on and they win the game 17-14. And even a nail-biting finish there at the end as the Bengals had some decent field position. They were able to go for the fourth down attempt, turnover on downs, Bucs hang on, win the game. But all in all, I'm not sure what more you could have asked for here in the opening preseason contest, but the Buccaneers do win 17-14. Your thoughts?
Well, the very first preseason game, right? In a game where your starters, most of your starters, we did see some of them, but most of your starters didn't really play at all, right? Didn't see Baker Mayfield, especially on offense, right? You saw a couple on defense. KJ Britt was out there. Even guys like Will Golston, who surprised me a little bit that he was playing, especially as much as he did. Greg Gaines, who you don't have to consider a starter, but a notable name. Guys like Logan Hall as well. But, I think what you take away from this is basically how good is the Buccaneers' depth? Right, because that's what really matters in these types of games, especially in the preseason when the final score doesn't matter. It matters to the players that are playing. Of course, they're going to go out, they're going to try and win the football game. But in the grand scheme of things, in 3 weeks it's going to go back to being 0-0. like that's what I always remind myself. So I thought there was obviously, just like every game, there were some positives, there were some negatives, there were some guys that I thought looked good, especially guys fighting for roster spots. There were some guys that were fighting for spots that I didn't think looked very good. So we're going to get into all that today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the things the Bucs did well against the Bengals. And really, you can't even have the conversation about what the Bucs did well without first bringing up the running backs. They have seemingly been the talk of the town ever since this game was over. Rookie running back Bucky Irving leading the charge. Now, he wasn't the leading rusher. That was Sean Tucker on the day. He had 68 yards on 10 carries. Bucky Irving, 28 yards on 6 carries and a touchdown to put the Buccaneers on the board. I'll say this, as far as the offense goes, it's exciting to talk about the run game. It's exciting to hear about the new formations, the new techniques, that Liam Cohen is adding into this offense. And this wasn't even a full offense. Let's remember that. This is the first preseason game. We're not seeing any folds of this offense. We're not really seeing a whole lot. Like, it was a streamlined version of this offense to get this team ready to go out there and execute at real NFL speed. And with it being a lot of rookies, a lot of depth guys, we talked about how that's going to be important. But, the run game, every running back last night, I don't want to say every running back was impressive, but I liked what I saw. I like what I see with the running back depth. Todd Bowles spoke about it today, and one of the things that was said about a lot of these guys is it doesn't seem like any one of these running backs that we saw, nobody's dancing behind the line of scrimmage. Nobody is taking too much time to analyze what their move is going to be. These guys are hitting the hole. They're hitting it hard. And even the offensive linemen, I think, did a really good job of extending these plays into the second and the third level, which is something we have not seen in this run game in a very, very long time. Bucky Irving on the night had 6 carries for 28 yards, averaging over 4 yards a tote. What are your thoughts early on Bucky Irving here?
Yeah, I mean, got a heavy workload, which I did expect. Obviously, it's nice to see him get in the end zone, right? Obviously.
Yeah, 3 straight targets on the first offensive series for the Buccaneers. They tried to go to Bucky Irving and then went to Bucky Irving and then attempted to go to Bucky Irving, I think 2 more times after that.
Yeah, he actually, and he took the opening kickoff too. So he actually, on their first possession, he touched the ball every single time. So, yeah, I thought he looked pretty good. Just like you talked about, the burst is there, the decision making, it's quick. He finds the hole, he hits it immediately, doesn't waste any time. Is it always going to work out? No, but that's just the NFL for you. I thought he played, like I said, with a lot of burst. And like I said, it was good to see him get in the end zone. They did try and get him involved in the passing game. The second play of the game was a set-up screen. Right now, the third play of the game where it was incomplete, that was just Trask trying to check the ball down, but that wasn't an effort to get him the football. But they were trying to get him involved early, right? And I do think that he showed some signs. He showed some flashes of what he could do, and I'm eager to see how he performs in these next 2 games, because I do think, again, he's going to play a lot. I don't know how much. You are going to see Rachaad White at some point this preseason. I just don't know how much that is. So I think you're still going to get a heavy dose of Bucky Irving in these next 2 games.
Yeah, my impression is that I've seen a couple of other people say this too, but I'm thinking that third preseason game is when we're going to get a big chunk of the starters, when we might see a full quarter of Baker Mayfield, maybe not Mike Evans, but, Trey Palmer, Chris Godwin getting featured a little bit more. Some of these guys that you haven't seen, Rachaad White that you had just mentioned. My gut says the third preseason game. We'll wait and see until next weekend, see what Todd Bowles has got in mind. But back to the offense here for Tampa Bay, 390 total yards of offense, 136 of those came on the ground. We've talked about Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker as well out there putting some work in, 10 carries, 68 yards. And then Ramon Jefferson, who scored the game-winning touchdown with under a minute left to go. He only had 2 carries for 6 yards and 1 touchdown, but I think it's important to note the 2 huge receptions that he had on that drive to put the Buccaneers in that position to begin with. John Wolford, when crunch time was on there at the end of the game, he did exactly what he needed to do, and the Bucs marched right down the field. Now, I know a flagrant pass interference later on would kind of help them get another shot at the end zone, but they were moving the ball quite well, I thought.
Yeah, and for Jefferson, that's just efficiency, right? I mean, 2 carries, 1 of them a touchdown. So half the time he's touching the ball, it's a touchdown. Hey, that's a good rate. I thought it was good. Look, I was thinking this last night. I was like, if you want to see how slow it feels like time moves, watch the fourth quarter of a preseason game, because, man, it just seems like at times the game's never going to end. And like I said, the players, of course, are trying to win, but I'm sure even the coaches are probably like, all right, we've seen enough, let's get out of here. Yeah. Especially, if you're all healthy, you don't want to risk any injury to anybody. So, but I thought, down 14-10, have an opportunity to take the lead with a touchdown and make something happen on a pretty long drive there with a couple of pretty big plays. Like you said, they do get helped out, with a pass interference call, which obviously probably decided the game pretty much. But so I thought that was a good sign. Obviously, you're not having any starters at that point, so it's not like you can say, "Oh, this guy really performed well." But it is good to see that the team can kind of run like the 2-minute drill, basically, and find a way, because a lot of times coaches in that situation will want certain potential in-game situations, right? All right, you're down 4, need a touchdown. Like, that's the type of scenarios they create in practice. In those scrimmages you see at training camp, down 4, needing a touchdown, 2 minutes left, go, and see how the offense responds. And, last night it was pretty good.
Yeah, can't get into too much detail about this new Liam Cohen offense just because we're going off of what we saw last night. But I will tell you, one of the first things that I saw, at least with this running game, is running out of tighter formations, bunching up your players, bringing your receivers closer to the play, getting them involved in blocking schemes. I believe we saw a couple of draw plays as well, which are always a sight for sore eyes. But from what I can tell with this running game, I think if you can get consistency with your interior offensive line, we'll talk about the depth there here in a minute. Graham Barton and Robert Hainsey both getting reps at center last night. I think if this interior offensive line can improve, and again, these tighter formations that seem to help the running backs find a little bit of room, I think if this is a sight of things to come, I think Bucs fans are going to be clamoring over the run game because people have been waiting forever. It's almost like it gives me shades of the field goal curse that we had forever, the kicker curse, right? We could never find a consistent field goal kicker. And although we've had some good running backs come in and out of Tampa Bay, I was a Ronald Jones fan. I know Playoff Lenny did some stuff for us here and there, but, since like Doug Martin, it really hasn't felt like the Bucs have ever found a consistent groove in the run game. And I mean, if they've ever had a game that was won by the run game over the last 5 years, if you can find me one, maybe there's less than 2 or 3. But I feel like Bucs fans are really going to be excited about this run game if they can continue to build off of what they showed us last night, because that was all the dirty work in the offense.
Well, yeah, and even Doug Martin, I think you had 2 years that were 1,000 yards of the 6 or 7 that he was here. So
yeah, rookie year contract year, and then after that he kind of disappeared.
Yeah. So it's been the point that I'm trying to make there is it's been a long time, like a really long time, that the Buccaneers haven't really had a consistent run game, I should say, right? And doesn't need to be excellent, doesn't need to be like the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb or the Tennessee Titans with Derrick Henry. No, it doesn't need to be that, right? Especially, I would argue in today's NFL, it probably shouldn't be that because the game has just changed so much that unfortunately, running the football just isn't as crucial as it used to be. Still very important, though. And we saw that in 2022, how it could really hurt an offense. 2023, it did improve a little bit. Now, I'll keep saying it. It would have been hard for them to regress from 2023 to 20, because 2022 was that bad. But you're just hoping that it would take another step. And as you mentioned earlier, this wasn't really the offense, right? Like Liam Cohen isn't going to put anything on tape in a preseason game that the Commanders could potentially look at, or any team that the Buccaneers are playing this year could potentially look at and say, well, they put this on tape. All right, let's try and stop this. He's going to keep all those tricks, he's going to keep them up his sleeve for now, right? He's not going to display anything or give away anything in these preseason games. So, however, that being said, it is nice to see, like you said, a lot of formations, the tight bunch formations, to create open lanes, to create open holes, the motion, the different looks, which is something that, Dave Canales talked about as well last year, but doing a similar play out of a different look, right? Or vice versa, doing a different play out of a similar look. All right, well, we have this formation here with the bunch formation, and the last time it was a pass. We're going to throw you that same formation. This time it's going to be a run. That's what keeps the defense off balance, sort of on their heels, not expecting what's coming, running different plays out of different looks. I think it is encouraging. I thought, we talked about Bucky Irving. I thought Sean Tucker, he looked really good last night.
Yeah.
The holes that the O-line was opening definitely helped, but I thought he looked quick. And this was a guy who I think fans put a little bit too much maybe faith in last year, and we're sort of forgetting that, like, he was an undrafted free agent. And would he have been drafted if he didn't have that heart condition? Maybe, right? but he would have been like a 5th or 6th round pick probably. So like it's not like he would have been this 3rd round pick if he didn't have a condition. And I think fans were disappointed by Sean Tucker last year because he didn't really get on the field much, and when he did, he really didn't do a whole lot. So I think it was a good start to the preseason, really good start to the preseason by Sean Tucker in this one. So I was encouraged by what you saw from the run game. Again, you don't really have a lot of your answers right now. You're going to get them in about a month's time, but so far so good and a pretty good start for the Bucs run game.
We got a question here regarding running back depth, and it's a good question from our buddy Christopher Cole here in chat. We know the Bucs are eventually going to have to start clearing up some room for roster spots here, and they make their way down to the 53-man roster, but when you look at what they're able to carry into the regular season, there's going to be a lot of discussion here over the next couple of weeks over running back depth, right? Sean Tucker having a nice game, Bucky Irving, going to assume that Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, and Chase Edmonds are going to take up a roster spot. I don't want to say for sure with Chase Edmonds just because he hasn't been very active at all in training camp. I assume the Bucs are going to want healthy bodies there when they have to start cutting these guys down, but we'll wait and see. He's a veteran. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But the question is this. Should the Buccaneers take a look at what they have at running back and carry 4 running backs on the depth chart into the season, or should they keep 4 tight ends? We'll talk about Devin Culp and some of the tight end headlines here in a minute.
So assuming they carry 4 backs, right? You mentioned Chase Edmonds. You mentioned that he was a veteran. I would expect Chase Edmonds to remain on this roster. I know he hasn't practiced. I know he hasn't played. He's been hurt. I get it. But I would expect him to remain on this roster. I'd be very surprised if he didn't, right?
Me too.
So honestly, and if they do end up cutting him, I think they'd be trying to replace him because you look at that running back room. Okay, there's a lot of talent, a lot of young talent. I think you need a veteran. I think Chase Edmonds is valuable to that group. So if they're keeping 4, the 4 would most likely be Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Chase Edmonds, and Sean Tucker.
Yep.
That feels likely to me. And obviously, we still got 2 more preseason games. A lot can happen between now and then. Injuries can happen to any spot, to anybody. But it feels likely to me that 4 running backs is probably what they're going to roll with.
Yeah, I agree. You talked about the veteran asset that is Chase Edmonds, and I think that's why he gets that nod there. But let's talk about this tight end room because we talked about the guys who are going to be on the roster. We know it's going to be Cade Otton. We know it's going to be Payne Durham. Kieft and Devin Culp here are kind of the guys that we had talked about on the game preview. Maybe an underrated battle. I hate to say that Kieft is fighting for his job here. He's been on the team now for a little while, but I mean, that's the nature of the business. Devin Culp last night in the game, 1 reception, 6 yards, was evaluated for a concussion, was cleared, and then entered the game a little bit later. Between Kieft and Devin Culp, do you think this could become a competition? Are the Bucs in danger of losing either Kieft or Culp here headed into the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, it's Payne Durham versus Devin Culp, right, for that tight end 2 spot. I don't really see it that way. I think Payne Durham pretty much has the tight end 2 spot locked up. I don't see anybody else. Payne Durham's been pretty good in training camp, had a nice day last night, had a couple of catches. I don't personally see anybody competing with that. But I will say that Culp has looked good in camp too. And if it's between Culp and Kieft, they bring different skill sets, okay? They're not the same player. But I have to imagine, and again, we still have 2 more games and everything, a lot can change. But at this point, I have to imagine Culp has the lead, right, in that job. So maybe they try and sneak Kieft on the practice squad. I Bleav they would be able to. I think by the rules, I Bleav they would be able to do that if they wanted to. I would expect one of those guys to probably be on the practice squad and then the other one to be on the roster. I don't know if they're going to, especially if they do carry 4 running backs. I don't know if they're going to carry 4 tight ends as well. They certainly could, and I mean, you just have to make a sacrifice somewhere else along the roster. If they really didn't want to lose Kieft, or didn't think Kieft would pass through waivers or whatever it may be, or Devin Culp for that matter. But If I had to guess right now, I'd say Culp is probably in the leader spot there, with Keith a little bit behind, and Payne Durham pretty much locked up the tight end 2 role.
Yeah, and Keith last night, 1 reception for 8 yards. Rondé Barber on commentary talked about how, Keith is known for his blocking. He's nitty-gritty, and he can definitely help you out in the run game if he can show improvement this year. But as far as his pass-catching ability, I don't think anyone's writing home about Keith as a pass catcher. But I will say, when he gets those opportunities, he definitely is sure to bring him in. Had a couple of incompletions last season, but I know he's got a couple of highlight reel catches. I think it was 1 catch, 1 touchdown last year for Keith, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So going to be interesting to see what ends up happening at the tight end position. But let's move on, continue talking about the offense here, and let's talk about the quarterbacks. Wanted to get your thoughts on the starter, Kyle Trask, 12 for 20, 144 passing yards through the air, no touchdowns, and an interception. Kind of a tic-tac interception. People could go back and forth all day, but my overall impression, I feel like this is a run-of-the-mill Kyle Trask preseason performance. Like, I can understand why people want to go on and write an article and say that he played well. I can also understand why people want to write an article and say that he didn't play well. It was very weird, but felt like more of the same for Kyle Trask. I do think a couple of good throws, couple of good moments. I do think he is showing progression from preseason to preseason, but if Baker Mayfield goes down during the regular season, I don't know if John Wolford or Kyle Trask, I don't know if either one of these guys are going to be enough to save the team. I think if Baker goes down, the season is over, but not to sound too negative here, what were your thoughts on Kyle Trask's performance last night?
I count me into one of the people that thought he played well. I saw a few things like on social media and everything that were, what a waste of a pick, and they need to get rid of Trask and stuff. And okay, in the grand scheme of things, a 2nd-round pick, probably was a waste of a pick. But that, to me, you're saying that because you think he's playing bad. I didn't really see that. I thought he played pretty well. Started off slow, obviously had the quick 3 and out. But then after that, I thought settled in pretty well. Hit, Jalen McMillan for 19 yards, hit Trey Palmer for 21 yards, really stuck in the pocket. And really, which I thought was the most impressive play of the night for him, stays in the pocket, takes a hit, and delivers a ball to Raheem Jarrett for like 26, 27 yards. And a really like an accurate ball too. So, he's a big boy, right? I think the broadcast that I was watching listed it was 6'5", 238 or something. So Kyle Trask, staying in the pocket, taking the hit, that's a good thing. And I thought he played pretty well. Wasn't anything like outstanding. No, but I thought he did his job. I thought he managed the game well. The interception wasn't the greatest decision in the world. I think he got a little bit too greedy there. Yeah. But, it is what it is. He was able to bounce back from it. And, what I saw from him, and again, you're right. I've seen a lot of different things, right? There is a lot of people that are saying, what I'm saying, that, I thought he played pretty decent. But there are, like I mentioned, there are people that are like, he can't be on this team. Like, I don't really see how you can watch that last night and think like, oh my God, this guy isn't even worthy of being on an NFL roster, because I thought he played decent.
Yeah, I thought he played fine, but here's the thing. Here's what I've noticed about Kyle Trask, and like I'm a Florida fan. I'm not as rabid of a Kyle Trask fan as some other Florida fans are, but I can be realistic and I can tell you what I see with this guy. I think his ball placement is getting better. Again, some of those fancy passes, a 28-yard completion to Raheem Jarrett last night under pressure, had to do some adjusting. But that's the thing with Kyle Trask, is that when he has to adjust, I feel like more times than not, he's either throwing the ball into the dirt, overthrowing a wide receiver, just cannot get his feet set. Whenever he's in a rhythm, whenever the play is designed and everything goes according to plan, I think he can get the ball to where it needs to go. But I think when the play breaks down, I think when you take away his intended receiver, when you take away his first read, and he's forced to adapt in the pocket and make a quick decision, I never feel great about that quick decision. Now, again, a couple of highlights last night, but I just don't know if that concern that I have, I don't know if that's going to stop him from building consistency. Now, obviously, trial by fire, I'm sure a lot of the issues that I have would be worked out if the guy was able to start a full season in the NFL. He'd actually be able to learn on the job. But I don't know. I think going into this game, we were hoping for Kyle Trask. I was hoping for Kyle Trask to play well enough to really be like the major talking point of today, but it was Bucky Irving in the run game. So Kyle Trask, still a couple games left to find out what he's made of, and he's got a lot to prove here over the next couple of weeks. But if you want to know how he played, I guess it just depends on who you ask. But I thought he played fine. Evan thought he played fine. Obviously, still some things to improve on, but we got a couple more games to do just that. Let's talk about John Wolford, the Wolfman, 12 for 18, 131 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And he was able to drive the team down the field there in the last 5 minutes of the game to set him up for scoring position, and ultimately the go-ahead touchdown with under a minute left to go. Ramon Jefferson with an angry run into the end zone as well. We forgot to mention that. But John Wolford, I mean, we're talking about a third-string quarterback here. We're talking about how he's able to run the offense. Some of the top receivers on the night, Ryan Miller, 3 receptions for 42 yards, 2 receptions, 35 for Raheem Jarrett. Tanner Canoe, who I thought was kind of the MVP in the last 2 minutes of the game there. 2 receptions for 29 yards, couple of big-time receptions there in crunch time for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the receiving end of John Wolford. This is a very long-winded question. What did you think of John Wolford running the offense last night?
Yeah, I mean, there was ups and downs, right? And again, you got to think of the competition he's playing against, but you got to think of who he's playing with at this point in the game, right? You're not going to be playing with, at that point, the Trey Palmers of the world didn't really play, Jalen McMillan even, So you're playing with all due respect to those guys, right? You're playing with sort of the bottom of the roster there, right? The guys that are really fighting for a job. And I thought, given the circumstances, I thought he played pretty well as well. I was fine with Wolford's performance. Like I said, the run, the 2-minute drill, right, and that it being successful is pretty big, because you want to see, even if it is a backup, even if you hope, and you should hope, that you never have to see John Wolford in a regular season game starting for the Buccaneers, because if you do, that's bad news for the Buccaneers. Even though that is the case, you still want to see if that guy responds to that type of situation and that type of scenario. So, and they did. They needed the touchdown, got the touchdown to take the lead, win the game. So I think all in all, I think I'm pretty pleased with Wolford's performance as well.
Yeah, don't let me forget to mention, thank you, Charles, for reminding me in chat. Tanner Canoe, as much good things as I have said, he did drop a touchdown in the end zone there. Wolford was looking for him. And then Cody Thompson, number 83, 3 receptions, 26 yards, had a couple of big-time plays on 4 targets as well. But I think as far as the offense goes, exciting to see what develops. The third and fourth quarter, when we're talking about John Wolford and DJ Williams, as you mentioned, these guys are playing against second and third, maybe fourth stringers. Guys are fighting to make the team, so it's not a ton that you can evaluate, but we will certainly try our best. I don't feel like I asked you about the offensive line enough, so before we go to the other side of the football, here are your thoughts on Graham Barton getting some work at center, Robert Hainsey, and the rest of that offensive line early on.
Yeah, I thought Barton looked good. It was interesting to see how they rotated him. It seemed like every other drive they were kind of rotating Hainsey and Barton in and out, which is fine. I was a little surprised that Cody Mauch played.
Yeah, me too.
Especially with Suapeta going down, I just didn't know if they were going to risk that, because there is no competition for that right guard. Like, to me, it's very clearly Cody Mauch's spot, and I was surprised that they took that gamble in the first preseason game. So, especially when you don't have Baker back there, right? So it's not really a worry about have to protect him or anything like that. That was a little surprising to me. I thought the offensive line looked okay. I thought, especially the interior, I thought was definitely a strength. I thought Brandon Walton had a rough day of it.
Yeah.
You know, which like he's one of those veteran guys, that they're going to be relying on for some depth. So hopefully he can bounce back. But overall, I thought the offensive line was decent. Barton, hopefully continuing to get better, looked pretty good in the run game, especially on the Bucky Irving touchdown. He was, him and Malk actually really were moving people out of the way on that one. So excited to see. I'm assuming, and I mean it's dangerous to assume, but I'm assuming Barton will get the start when the actual starters are out there. I would assume. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm curious to see how he does. With more playing time here coming up.
Yeah, I think it was good to see Barton out there and to see him getting actively involved in the run blocking. I think, on that Bucky Irving touchdown, he was in the end zone before Irving was, I Bleav. So, those guys getting to the second and third level is something that we have not seen a lot of. And I think if Barton can continue to play with that aggressiveness, he can potentially be the guy that I have been clamoring for these last couple of years. I've said it, the Bucs need body movers. They need people movers. And I think Graham Barton, that aggressiveness off of the line that we saw on that touchdown run, I hope that can develop into some real skills here into the regular season, but definitely got to like what you have seen. Before we go any further, folks, I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Autograph, the app that curates the best content, tickets, and gear to help you fan to your full potential. Now, we all know that being a fan is a full-time job, so Autograph does the heavy lifting for you. From tickets to big matchups to breaking news, the Autograph app has curated content for fans of all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All the podcasts, articles, and game predictions you could ever want, including the show that you're watching right now. The new replay feature lets you get the day's news without the noise for when you need the too long didn't read to start your day. Use promo code BUCKS to download for free on the Google Play or Apple App Store today. That is, once again, Autograph, promo code BUCKS, BUCS. And come join this kick-ass community that we are building all around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both Evan and myself have downloaded the Autograph app. You can find us on there. Check out the leaderboard. Look for our name. They reward you for every little thing that you do. If you listen to an episode of our podcast, it's like 50 coins. If you read an article, I think it's 5 or 10 coins. If you go check out another article, depending on what's embedded in that article, it could be a different prize. And then, of course, you can rack up those coins and use them for some legitimately cool stuff. Like, you can use the Autograph app. You can buy Buccaneers tickets. And one of the things that they have right now, 2,500 coins. You can get 2-for-1 tickets on the Buccaneers-Eagles game coming up later this year. So go check it out. It really is a cool community. I'm having a lot of fun with the app. Looking to connect with some more of our fellow Bucs fans on there soon. Thank you to Autograph for sponsoring the show. Let's talk about the defense, Evan, and some of the top tacklers out there. Led the team in tackles was a guy that we talked about on the game preview we were going to be watching closely. That is linebacker J.J. Russell. And defensive back Tyke Smith went to work right behind him. 7 total tackles for Russell, 5 total tackles for Tyke Smith. And they were active. What did you think overall in the first half of this Buccaneers defense? I know, well, hold on. Let me set the stage a little bit differently here. What did you think of this defense aside from Joe Burrow's opening drive? Because let's not forget that Joe Burrow's opening drive, just to check the stat sheet one more time, 5 for 7, 51 yards and a touchdown. So he went to work pretty quickly against this Buccaneers defense, and they were kind of reeling early in the game, but ultimately came around, and I think the guys who we wanted to see get active were certainly active between J.J. Russell and Tyke Smith.
Yeah, they actually did. They really came around. I mean, after that opening drive, the Buccaneers defense forced 3 straight 3-and-outs. So, might have something to do with the backups versus the starters. I don't know.
Maybe.
I feel like that matters. Yeah, that feels important. I thought. Look, I thought Tyke Smith started a little slow. It is tough to evaluate, especially that first drive. I thought he settled in, though. J.J. Russell, like you said, KJ Britt got that first series against the Bengals starters, and I Bleav he sat the rest of the way. But, I mean, got the first series against the starters. It's not like it was 5 plays. It was 11 plays or something.
Yeah.
So, got a lot of work, did KJ Britt. And, like I said, J.J. Russell is another guy who last year didn't have as big of a role. And now, like I talked about on the game preview show, these guys are going to keep, with the departure of Devin White, everybody's going to move up a slot, right, in terms of role, in terms of importance. And a guy like J.J. Russell, his role is certainly going to expand, as we get closer to the regular season and as guys, get hurt or replaced, whatever it may be. J.J. Russell may become, pretty important for the Buccaneers. Tyke Smith, he could be the team starting nickel. Like, you could be looking at a guy who is the starter for this football team. And look, he's a rookie. There's going to be ups and downs, right? It's going to be a roller coaster, I think. And just have to wait and see, how he responds to that. And there's going to be good and there's going to be bad. But like I said, I thought he started off a little slow, but then settled in. And I think that's sort of what you'd expect from a rookie almost. So I'm again, he's another guy I'm excited to see more of. I'm excited to see how he plays. If he gets a shot with the starting defense, right, in the preseason, how does that look? How is he utilized? Is he at nickel? Do they move him around to safety a little bit? How do they kind of toy with that? And so I'm curious to see that. But yeah, those two names you brought up, will play roles for the Buccaneers this year. 2 different roles. Because, like I said, I think J.J. Russell's more of a depth guy, and Tyke Smith could be a starter. But both guys, I feel like both are young guys, and I feel like they both had their moments on Saturday night.
Yeah, J.J. Russell kind of in a competition here with Kalen DeLoach, who had 2 total tackles last night, the undrafted free agent from Florida State. I think Russell's got the edge right now for sure. He was all over the place last night, showed up, and I think could prove to be a valuable depth piece for the Buccaneers if he ends up making the team, which I think he will as of right now. We talked about that opening drive, and we talked about Joe Burrow going to work, 5 for 7. But on those 2 incompletions, I wanted to talk about this defensive back who I thought had a really good day, especially early on with the defense kind of reeling. That was Kayvon Merriweather. He was trying to make plays all over the place. He had a big pass breakup deep downfield with Joe Burrow looking end zone. And then I think he got some pressure off of a blitz, ended up getting a tackle for loss. I thought he played very well, too, when we talk about some of these younger DBs getting involved.
Yeah, and especially early. Early on, he made his presence felt. He was all over the place. I was pretty impressed. I think he was probably, arguably, their best defensive back on Saturday night. Very good showing for him. A guy who got some playing time last year, sparingly, at times. So somebody that the Buccaneers really like, and he's battling in a pretty crowded room. And again, we talked about this, on the game preview show. We talked about there's a lot of guys in the secondary that are going to be battling for some spots, and Kayvon Merriweather is one of those guys, and made one heck of a first impression here in the 2024 preseason to open it up because. From start to finish, even when the Bengals starters were in there, when they weren't in there, Kayvon Merriweather was all over the place.
Yeah, and we talk a little bit more about that opening drive. Some of the guys who stepped in, played well. I thought Keenan Isaac had a couple of big-time pass breakups. I think after the missed field goal, he was targeted deep and ends up breaking up a pass down there. I think it was like 40.
Well, he ended up having the pick.
Yes. So, I mean, he had a big-time day. I wanted to focus, though, on some of the guys that maybe didn't have the best day, and I hate to do that. We've talked about these young defensive backs, and a lot of names have been tossed around. The interception with Keenan Isaac, as you had just talked about, Kayvon Merriweather stepping up and having a good day. A hot name throughout camp who I do not think had a very good day was Josh Hayes. On that opening drive, the 17-yard defensive pass interference call, apparently it wasn't on him, but regardless, he faces the penalty for it, and I mean, he really wasn't much better after that. So even if a mistake was made by the officiating crew, I don't think Josh Hayes had a very good night.
Yeah, I think the issue that I had with the pass interference call was I didn't think the ball was catchable.
Yeah.
It's not that T. Higgins, I Bleav it was Higgins. It's not that he didn't get interfered with. I just didn't think that ball was necessarily catchable. So, but T. Higgins did get Josh Hayes later on the touchdown. Higgins, faked him out of his boots and scored pretty easily. Up and down day for a lot of the Bucs secondary. Josh Hayes is one of the guys that had a down day. And again, it's one game, and not gonna judge him solely based on this one game, but not the greatest start. But he's gonna have some opportunities to bounce back here because I still think he's gonna play an awful lot, in these next two preseason games. So he's a guy that the Bucs really like. They really like his versatility. Again, he can kind of play all over the place. I think he's actually listed on the Bucs website as just DB, not really a safety or corner. So Josh Hayes, again, not the greatest day, but he'll have time to make up for it.
Yeah, and we'll wrap up with the rest of the defense here. I don't want to end things on a negative note. I just feel like that's where we've ultimately found ourselves here. And I also feel like this isn't going to be the last time we cover this topic, but I got to tell you, man, talking about who was disappointing last night, this Buccaneers pass rush as a whole. Here, let me ask you two questions here. One, what are your thoughts on the pass rush? And I kind of know what they are because we've talked about it a bunch here. But two, why was Joe Tryon-Shoyinka not on the field?
Oh, to answer the latter, I think JTS wasn't on the field because what happens if something happens to him?
Yeah.
They already have Yaya Diaby down, right? And while he may be ready for week one, how healthy is he gonna be? So I think that matters. Look, and they view him as a starter right now. I mean, even if Diaby didn't get hurt, your two starting outside linebackers would probably be Yaya Diaby and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Like, I don't really foresee Anthony Nelson getting that spot over Diaby or Shoyinka, and I don't see Chris Braswell getting that spot either. So I think those would be your starters. So that would explain that for me at least. So I do think you will see Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I don't think they're gonna, just because Yaya Diaby got hurt, I don't think they're gonna be so cautious, to be like, can't play him. But overall, the pass rush, it is tough to truly evaluate. Here's the thing: it's tough to truly evaluate because they are without Diaby, Shoyinka. Like they are without those guys. Anthony Nelson, I think, played a little bit, not really much at all.
Yeah.
Chris Braswell had some moments.
It's so tough to evaluate because, Evan, they literally gave us nothing to evaluate. Like, I wish I was being dramatic here, but I don't even think they recorded any pressures, no quarterback hits. Damn well not a sack, but my God, we're talking about guys matching up with second and third stringers, and we knew the depth was going to be an issue. We knew there was going to be a lot of questions with this pass rush, and again, it's hard to evaluate, but it makes it even harder to evaluate when they literally did nothing out there.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. It is, like I said, Braswell had a moment. I forget at what point it was, but he had bull rushed the tackle that he was facing, like right into the quarterback, and it forced an incompletion. But yeah, not much going, right? And I feel like it's just the preseason. We are going to be discussing that a lot this upcoming season. I have a feeling, unfortunately, that we are going to be discussing the pass rush a lot this upcoming year. And I'm going to be honest, like a lot of times I feel like it's not going to be great discussions. There will be times where pass rush, got some pressure, but it feels like if this team has one Achilles heel right now, it feels like the pass rush and just not being able to get consistent pressure on the quarterback. So again, it is just one game. It is tough to evaluate because they didn't really give you much, but you're without Diaby and Shoyinka. Vita Vea wasn't out there, who obviously he's on the interior, but he helps the pass rush. Elijah Cansey, same thing. So it's also tough to evaluate from that standpoint. But yeah, not the greatest stuff.
Yeah, $2 super chat here from Joel L. Rican. Bucs football is back. Thank you, Joel, for your support. By the way, we will wrap up the show with a very important announcement. Breaking news, if you will. Ladies and gentlemen, memberships are now active for the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel. For $4.99 a month, you can become a premium subscriber, a member, if you will. A member of the Cannon Fire crew is what we would like to call it. I think it's catchy, right? Do you like that? I mean, I've already announced it, so we can't change the name. That'd make us look dumb. But I like Cannon Fire crew, right?
That works, yeah.
$5 a month, become a member of the Cannon Fire crew, directly support the show, and help us continue to do this thing full time. Buccaneers football is getting ready to rear its ugly head. I don't want to say ugly head, but when we talk about the pass rush, that's what it makes me think of. Buccaneers football is back, and as you know, the coverage of the Buccaneers, brought to you by the Cannon Fire Podcast, is back, and we are going to be amping things up this year, just like we do every year. Once the regular season gets going, you can expect 3 shows a week, plus some more extra content, and by becoming a member of the Cannon Fire crew, you get access to exclusive content not available anywhere else, plus you will get chat priority, highlighted messages, and all the great benefits that you already get by being a subscriber of the Cannon Fire Podcast. But yeah, something new that we're going to be trying, and just, looking to build the channel, looking to build this community of listeners and this community of Bucs fans into something special. And part of what we're using to do that is the memberships here over on YouTube. So if you like supporting the show, consider becoming a member. Only $4.99 a month, but that option now available. Include free t-shirts and a signed jersey, says game on, and then he'll think about it. Free t-shirts might be on the list. I don't know about a signed jersey. That's a lot for me to facilitate, but I will do what I can. Maybe we'll do some giveaways this upcoming season as well, getting some more people excited for the content. But this is it. We are back in it. Now I'm kind of struggling to find a point to end the show on. I feel so bad ending the show on the pass rush, but I'm so disappointed. Like, I'm like a disappointed dad.
Yeah.
I feel let down, and I don't know what else to feel about the pass rush right now except for a big, deep exhale. You know what I mean? Like, I know that eventually, 8, 9, 10 weeks from now, the pass rush is going to be a thorn in our side. I can feel it now.
Yeah, you just have to hope that guys like, well, one, you have to hope Diaby can be healthy, right, quickly, and then you just have to hope that guys like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka can develop, and just or maybe not even JTS, but maybe Chris Braswell takes a similar thing that Diaby did last year, where he comes out of nowhere kind of and takes a big step, so. It does feel, like you said, 8 to 9 weeks from now, you're going to be sitting there at the midway point of the season and saying, man, like, they could have probably maybe 2 or 3 more wins right now if this pass rush is a little better, but they don't. And it's just, it is a little bit frustrating. But at this point, man, it's just kind of got to be something you're going to have to work with, and the Bucs are going to have to work with too, and just hope that some guys develop and somehow come up with ways to affect the quarterback.
I do say, and we'll wrap up with this, a couple of good points brought up here in the chat. The depth is what it is. You saw what it was last night. It's obviously going to be an issue. I think there's going to be a couple of points this season where the pass rush will be an issue. Yaya Diaby, fingers crossed, he'll be healthy and ready to go week 1. But even when he's healthy and ready to go, he's not going to be playing anywhere near 100%. Probably going to take him a couple of weeks to really get into the groove of things and get those valuable reps that he is missing at training camp and the preseason. But when we talk about depth, I wanted to ask you one question about a name that was brought up in chat. Do the Bucs look for any outside help? I know it's not entirely off of the table, but Hassan Reddick's still out there if you're looking for a pass rusher. Is there anyone else you think the Bucs could pick up for cheap here? Is that something they consider? Or do you think Jason Light, Todd Bowles are kind of just, they know where they're at, they know what this pass rush is, and they're ready to roll with it?
Yeah, well, Reddick technically isn't available. He's technically on the Jets, but he's just not showing up.
Nice.
So he's a popular trade. Yeah. So, well, the Bucs are dealing with one of their own there too.
Yeah. I
So,
was gonna say there's a top market, or I don't know about top market, but there is a free agent pass rusher out there by the name of Randy Gregory. Technically not available, but available.
yeah. Yeah. So I really don't know, man. It might be something to where maybe like we talked about, I think with the guard position about how when teams make their final cuts, teams are going to be cutting some guys, and maybe the Buccaneers look to pick up a guy at that point. In 2018 they picked up Carl Nassib on final cut day. That was a really good waiver claim by them. So maybe something like that comes down the line. I don't foresee anything imminent, but. It is. It is something that I think they're going to keep their eye on. I don't think they're going to be content, but I don't know if they're going to force it. They're not going to do something just to do something. So
Right.
If there's a guy that they like, maybe out there right now, if they really liked him, I don't know why he wouldn't have been signed, but you know, and then you get final cut down day when there's maybe some veterans, right? There's always a surprise every year where like, oh wow, you recognize that name. Okay, he got cut. Maybe that's something to where they explore if they feel they need that at that time, which, if Randy Gregory doesn't return, maybe they do. They clearly signed Gregory to be that veteran presence, and he hasn't been there. So maybe they do want, to bring in a veteran anyway.
And we'll wrap it up with this. A good point by Charles Jansen II in chat. He says, we'll end the show with the running game blocking was better and better play calling on the offensive side of the ball. I'll take that. Overall impressions with this game, yes, I think the run game I think they're building something special in the run game, and I think Liam Cohen has a good understanding of what's going to make some of these guys tick. And I also think the addition of Bucky Irving is going to do so much good for this run game. Having a running back who is decisive when picking his gaps and just bringing it to any defender who comes across him. We need a guy like Bucky Irving in this Buccaneers running back room, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm excited to see him run the football next weekend. So going to be getting another good look at Bucky Irving here throughout the rest of the preseason and, of course, Buccaneers camp. But I Bleav, ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us live on YouTube. Charles Jansen, Jerome B., Richard T. from the West Coast checking in with us. Game on as well. Our good buddy Christopher Cole, Joel L. Rican with the $2 super chat. Mikey Kelly, cannot forget. Matt Olm as well. Adam Davies from Bucs UK, and anybody else that I may have missed. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And looking forward to the next one. You can find our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything this week?
I think I'm going to be taking a look, at this now that we have an actual football game to evaluate. I'm going to be taking a look at some of the standout performers, right? So a lot of the guys we talked about today, maybe a few other ones I'll sneak in there. So check that out on the site as well as all of our other covers, not just by me, but by a lot of the other talented writers that we have there on the staff.
Awesome. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram, and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Don't forget to check out our community over on Autograph. Promo code BUCS, BUCS, when you download and set up for free and all in one place for Tampa Bay Buccaneers news, articles, podcasts, and more, including the Cannon Fire Podcast. Go download the Autograph app today, co-founded by Tom Brady. Big business right there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool community we're building, and very excited to be a part of it here in 2024. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.